The Premier clamping down on the stubborn Delta outbreak with what she's calling a no-regrets policy. And this is why. From a record 82,000 tests, the state today recorded 111 cases and tragically the third COVID death in this outbreak, a man aged in his 80s from the city's southeast. Across Greater Sydney, retail shops will now close. A small list of essential stores can remain open. Construction sites across the city shut down. And from midnight tonight, 110 suburbs across Liverpool, Fairfield and Canterbury Bankstown will be sealed shut. That's 900,000 residents who can't leave their area, even for work. Let's now go to Lauren Tomasi at Fairfield. And Lauren, this means as many as 500,000 construction workers right across Sydney will be out of a job when the new restrictions hit.
If you are not vaccinated, be prepared to be basically in lockdown until Christmas. In mid-October, when we hit 70% double dose, visitors to households, if everyone is vaccinated with caps, will be okay. Pubs and restaurants will reopen for vaccinated customers with the 4 square metre rule to apply. Hairdressers and barbers will open again only if you've had both jabs. Now, vaccinated services in our places of worship with 4 square metre capacity limits, as well as funerals and weddings with caps. Now, sporting crowds will return again too, with capacity limits and only if you're vaccinated. What's interesting is I've been told there's not even been a discussion in Crisis Cabinet on when unvaccinated people can do any of this, Peter.
There's little sympathy for anyone ignoring the health orders, even this group of teenagers caught partying after dark at the bottom of the North Bondi Cliffs. Herded to higher ground by Polaire's spotlight and speaker, the 8 boys were placed in handcuffs and left to explain a $1,000 fine to mum.
681 penalty infringement notices issued in the last 24 hours. More than 400 of those notices were again for people being outside of their home without a reasonable excuse.
Even when you get to that 70 or 80%, you probably still need to use lockdowns and other strategies judiciously, but you probably still need to use them. Otherwise, you would start seeing those results. Yes.
The trial to have returning South Australians from interstate and overseas conduct their quarantine at home is tonight underway. Mike Lorrigan's here with the details. Now, Mike, the first person is already being monitored.
Brenton, this person is fully vaccinated. They have arrived from interstate and they are the first of up to 50 people to take part in this pilot program. It is the first in the country in this pandemic. These people will be digitally tracked to ensure they're sticking to their 14 days quarantine at home. The SA government has developed this technology for the program. It includes an app with a geolocator and facial recognition software. The participants are contacted randomly and have just 15 minutes to verify their location, or authorities will be on their doorstep. This trial is initially only for fully vaccinated people arriving from New South Wales and Victoria, but it's hoped to be extended to low-risk overseas arrivals by the end of next month.
We expect people to cooperate. This is a great alternative to being in a hotel room for a 2-week period with the associated costs with that, and also that associated inability to move around in one's own home.
The results from this pilot program will be provided to the National Cabinet in the coming weeks, with the plan for it to become the national standard within months.
I'd also say this, the other area of danger is the place that we would normally consider to be the safest place on earth, our homes. You already heard today that a number of the people who've actually now got the virus got it in a home situation. And we'll hear more detail about that in due course. But it is both a safe place and a dangerous place. We must treat this new world order, this new world of COVID, we must treat this new world of COVID, even in our own homes, with a high level of care and caution.
Well, if you don't want to get vaccinated, stay home. Don't go out, because if you want to be able to go out, go on holidays, travel around this country and internationally. If you want to go out and enjoy the footy, you want to hug a loved one, you want to be able to shake hands again, then you need to get vaccinated. That's your choice, but it's not a smart choice not to get vaccinated. And there's statements made like, once you get to the 80%, the national plan says no more lockdowns needed. That is not true.
80% double dose means we can be freer than what we are today, no doubt about it. But does it mean we forget QR codes? Absolutely not. So we are working on a plan now as to what life will look like at 80%, and it does depend on the case numbers at the time as well. It has to be backed up with stronger compliance through the police force, stronger efforts for all of us. If you know that extended family members or friends are doing the wrong thing, call them out. And pleasingly, as Deputy Commissioner Willing reminds us, as Deputy Commissioner Warboys has, thousands and thousands of people are ringing Crime Stoppers every day and giving police great leads. Keep that up.
In relation to yesterday's protest, can I say how absolutely disgusted I was? It broke my heart. Millions and millions of people across our state are doing the right thing, and it just broke my heart that people had such a disregard for their fellow citizens. I just ask everybody to think about that. Each of those people who protested illegally, I'm sure, have loved ones. They're going to go home and risk passing that virus on to their most closest people to them. So thank you to all of you doing the right thing, and to those of you that aren't, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Whilst it is in human nature to engage in conversation with others, to be friendly, unfortunately, this is not the time to do that. So even if you run into your next door neighbour in the shopping centre, in the Coles, whilst you're at Coles or Woolworths or Aldi or any other grocery shop, don't start up a conversation. Now is the time for minimising your interactions with others. Even if you've got a mask, do not think that affords total protection. We want to be absolutely sure that as we go about our daily lives, we do not come into contact with anyone else that would pose a risk. We need to get used to being vaccinated with COVID vaccines for the future. I can't see that COVID is not going to be with us forever. Maybe in the future we can have even better vaccines and coverage across the world to achieve that. I mean, as a public health doctor, we always want to have diseases get totally eliminated, but that's not on the horizon in the near future. So booster doses, repeat doses will be part of it. You know, there'll be different advice about different schedules, which doses you get. But at the moment, our priority has to be getting first and second doses into people, and there will be recommendations about booster doses in the future. And I can assure you that the Commonwealth Government has purchased large quantities of vaccine into 2022, and this will be a regular cycle of vaccination and revaccination as we learn more about when immunity wanes.
At what point does the pandemic end and COVID-19 becomes endemic?
I think that's the reality that most of the world has been confronting. What we're really pleased to say is we've got great vaccines. And I think I've indicated before that, you know, we will be getting vaccinated regularly. There will be new strains that emerge potentially, and we'll have boosters, a bit like seasonal flu. So every year in seasonal flu, they try and predict which strains are the predominating strains, and we have a vaccine. What's really useful is some of the technology. We've made vaccines quicker than we've ever made them before, and so some of the mRNA technology gives us hope that we'll be able to rapidly accommodate to any changes in the virus. But that's where we're going to be, and the key message is we need to get that second dose protection. So whilst I'm very pleased we are at 70% first dose, as you know, I've previously said I want to see the sky as a limit. I think Australia can be the most vaccinated country in the world because we believe in science and we believe in vaccines. But what I also need to do is get that second dose into people because 2 doses protects.
we will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the New World Order. And yes, it will be pubs and clubs and other things if we have a positive case there. Our response may be different if we know that people are fully vaccinated.
But obviously we urge people to be vaccinated, but a key message also is just because you're vaccinated, you can still get infected and be infectious.
I'm certain that there will be a whole range of events once we get through the 70 and 80% double dose thresholds, once we get past those important milestones, that will be open for vaccinated people only. So we're going to move from a situation where, to protect the health system, we've got everybody locked down. We're going to move to a situation where, to protect the health system, we're going to lock out people who are not vaccinated and can be. If you're making the choice not to get vaccinated, then you're making the wrong choice. You're making the wrong choice. And for safety's sake, and for back to that point about how much work our nurses have to do, as this becomes absolutely a pandemic of the unvaccinated and we open everything up, it's not going to be safe for people who are not vaccinated to be roaming around the place spreading the virus. That's what they'll be doing. So there's every reason to get vaccinated. But yes, there's going to be a vaccinated economy, and you get to participate in that if you are vaccinated. And I'm deeply grateful and so proud of the millions and millions of Melburnians and Victorians who are doing the right thing. But every time even a small number of people make really bad choices, selfish choices, it takes away from the hard work that so many millions more are doing, and it extends these lockdowns because it makes it more likely that we will have more cases. We have greater risk, greater uncertainty, and therefore we have no choice but to follow advice that says we need to go harder and we need to go longer. There will be a curfew on advice from the Chief Health Officer from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. each and every day. Exercise is just that. It's not an opportunity for 7 families to catch up in the park. It's exercise. So it's you and one other person from your household or dependents. So we have got to tighten up some of these rules in relation to gatherings. Each and every patron will have to give their first name, mobile phone, address, things of that nature. It's very simple, doesn't take very long, but it will just make the job of contact tracing in the event that there was a positive case at that particular venue at that particular time. The other thing too that every patron should do, if you want to get back to restaurants and cafes and pubs, then download the app. I've done it, everyone on stage here's done it. It makes sense. It's just one more tool that'll make it a little bit easier, never easy, but a little bit easier for our 1,000 strong coronavirus detective squad to track you, to trace you, and to make sure that you're doing the right thing by your health and the health of those who you love the most.
You know, there's a whole bunch of people down the Ryback Beach last night who thought the best thing to do was to go and watch the sunset. I'm sure it was a beautiful sunset. But that's not in the spirit or in the letter of these rules. We need people to follow the rules. And genuinely, stay at home means stay at home. Stay at home, or lots of people are going to be staying in hospital and not all of them will get to leave.
There will be no removal of masks to consume alcohol outdoors. So you will no longer be able to remove your mask to drink a cocktail at a pop-up beer garden on a footpath as part of a pub crawl. Take away, not hang around and turn the footpath into a pub. Pubs are shut for a reason. It's not safe for them to be open. It's as simple as that. There'll be no more drinking alcohol with your mask off in those circumstances. They will simply not be permitted. Playgrounds, basketball courts, skate parks and exercise equipment, despite the fact that it's outdoors, will be closed from 11:59 p.m. tonight. Religious broadcasts, they'll be further limited. Permits for authorised work will come back, not from tonight, but there'll be a little bit of leeway so that we can move to that system, but that's from 11:59 p.m. tomorrow night. Also, for the purposes of higher education, if you're an authorised student, as it were, for the purposes of attending, some students need to attend their tertiary institution, then you would need a permit. The construction sector, large projects will be reduced to 25%. Smaller projects will have a maximum of 5 workers. There will be additional restrictions in relation to movement between sites where trades work multiple sites. Again, they've done it before and they'll do it again, and it will be effective again, just as it was last time.
And I would just appeal to anybody who's frustrated, and I get that people are frustrated, but it seemed to me that they were protesting about a whole lot of things yesterday, not just coronavirus, but, you know, the global world order and vaccines and all sorts of different things. That is self-indulgent, it's selfish, it's wrong, and Victoria Police are having a close look at everybody who is involved. It's no way to behave.
If you have symptoms, then with so little cold and flu around, if you've got symptoms, you've got COVID. That's what you have to assume. Please go and get tested as soon as you register symptoms. Please follow the rules. We'd all love to be visiting family and friends. Some people have been visiting family and friends, and all it does is it spreads the virus.
And one of those options might be to say to people, and other countries in the world are doing this, here is an electronic device that means we can be certain about where you are, but there is some technology that can actually monitor your vital signs as well, so it becomes something that's not just to ensure you stay where you're supposed to stay, it's also a way in which we can monitor whether you're healthy or otherwise.
Many of them have lost their jobs, they're distrustful of government to begin with. They probably will not be dissuaded from doing this again, given the kind of language you've used, even though a lot of people would agree with the language you've used, including most of us here. Have you considered using language that appeals to them to try and change their behaviour rather than demonising them further, even though that's the natural instinct probably of all of us?
At this stage, the greatest incentive is freedom. If you're vaccinated, you are going to be able to participate in the economy.
No, I wouldn't. I speak plainly. I try and be as frank and as direct and as honest as I can be in the language I use, and that's what I believe the vast majority of Victorians want. We're not cuddling up to these people, and frankly, seriously, I'm making a serious point. I don't know what half of them were protesting against.
You.
Well,
a lot of them.
Then, well, good on them. Except it's illegal, it's unsafe, it's selfish, and it puts at risk the hard work that millions of other Victorians are doing.
There is still too many people going from house to house, still too many people wanting to game the system, still too many people who want to organise and call for mass protests against the health orders which are putting lives in danger. So that's my focus at the moment.
But would you have any hesitation to go harder?
If that's what the Commissioner suggests to the Premier, well then I'll back him every step of the way.
You'd be happy with a curfew?
Again, if that's what the Commissioner would recommend to the Premier, I would back him every step of the way. But what we've got to do is, as I said, last week we wanted to make sure that the options that have been put before us by the public health orders are complied with, and that's our focus.
How do you stop people from gathering in households, though? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, that's why I made myself the most unpopular man in Australia last week when I said everybody should snitch on their neighbour if they see their neighbours.
Are you finding that people are doing that?
Ignoring the laws. Yeah, because we're literally getting thousands of people calling Crime Stoppers. I think there was one day there was 1,500 calls to Crime Stoppers, and they've been very, very good because, I don't want people to think that it's dobbing. I want people to think that it's guaranteeing freedom earlier than we expected.
Yeah. But as Police Minister, I mean, you've got a pretty important task at the moment. Many would argue it is the most important task at the moment to crack down on people who are breaking the law, who are flouting the rules.
Well, that's right. So enforcement comes from that committee. Enforcement comes from the orders that I received from the Health Minister and the Chief Medical Officer. And me being in there or not, it's not going to change those health orders. And those health orders come written by the lawyers on the back of medical advice. So the police just receive the orders and make sure there's compliance, which is why my appeal is, don't blame the cops for these public health orders. They're health orders. They're not police orders. The police are there to make sure that the orders are complied with, and the orders need to be complied with so that we can get out of lockdown.
Just finally, also, you did mention the protest that some are planning for this weekend. Are you expecting that to go ahead, and just your message for that?
I make no apology for erring on the side of caution. The police commissioner has told me that we're well prepared for any disorder that might occur, any people deliberately disobeying the laws, and if that happens, well, they'll be meeting 1,500 cops, and they should bring their chequebook, because we'll be happy to give them those increased fines.
Can you talk about the two people who've sadly died taking AstraZeneca, and would you be worried if one of those people, as I understand it, or the family claims wasn't fully informed of the symptoms to look out for?
Well, we're all responsible for our own health, and when it comes to informed consent and giving consent to whatever treatment or procedure you may have or I may have, then I'm ultimately responsible for what people do in their health treatment to me. People make their own decisions about their own health and their own bodies. That's why we don't have mandatory vaccination in relation to the general population here, because people make their own decisions. The vaccines, like any vaccine, with any vaccine there are risks associated, and I won't go into each of the individual ones because I don't want to particularly draw attention to anyone. But we all understand that with any vaccine there are risk factors, and they're enumerated and they're made available to people, and people make decisions about that.
We will share with you the most up-to-date information daily. You can trust us as a source of that information. You can also trust the Director General of Health and the Ministry of Health. For that information, do feel free to visit at any time to clarify any rumour you may hear, covid19.govt.nz. Otherwise, dismiss anything else. We will continue to be your single source of truth. We will provide information frequently. And when you see those messages, remember that unless you hear it from us, it is not the truth. And I really ask people, just visit covid19.govt.nz. It has all of the up-to-date information, and we will continue to provide everything you need to know.
But we ask people to stay 2 metres away from anyone you pass. Stay local and do not congregate. Don't talk to your neighbours. Please keep to your bubbles. So keep those movements outside to the bare minimum, wear a mask, and make sure you keep up that physical distancing. If you are completely isolated or you live alone, remember you can join a bubble with one other person that you have contact with. It needs to be just you and that person, though. You must be faithful to them, and they must be faithful to you. Those in those circumstances will remember those rules from our last level 4.
On first doses, sorry, you'd get to 80% of the entire adult population at first doses around October 20. Would one think that after 80% of the entire adult population has had a dose, that would lessen the risk of this happening again?
Not based on every other country around the world, unfortunately. Even those countries with some of the highest rates in the world have Delta outbreaks. And the thing that I would say is that does not mean that there is an issue with the effectiveness of vaccine. Not at all. You know, what we are seeing is a significant reduction in hospitalisation and severe illness. So the vaccine is doing what it's meant to do.
I think early next year we'll be in the phase of chasing up people who haven't come forward to get their vaccination or have missed their bookings and so on. So everyone will be able to get a vaccine between now and the end of the year. But of course, you know, and I want every New Zealander to come forward, but human behaviour suggests that there will be some people that we have to actually really go out and look for, and some of that may spill into next year. But our commitment is everyone will have the opportunity to get the vaccine by the end of the year. Everyone will, but I can't say that, you know, that we're not going to have some hesitant people or some people who just haven't come forward that we don't have to go out and find next year.